Free NBA podcast. We are here recording this on a Wednesday night. Probably coming out sometime over the weekend. We still have our last one we still got to put up. Let's get this set up here. And we're off. It's another shoot-around. We're starting things off with basketball-related stuff. We're closing on the end of the regular season. We're going to do some more of the see you later kind of stuff. Last time we did see you later to likely playoff team stuff that we're done talking about the Clippers, the Warriors, the Cavs. We just want to see them playing in the playoffs. The people still talking about like the Cavs haven't been that great on defense since the break. Like the playoffs start, they know that needs to be addressed. But we're gonna go down to the bottom and say goodbye first to the Brooklyn Nets. Or see you next season, not goodbye.
Yeah.
See you next season. Brooklyn. I'll kick it to you. General thoughts on how their season's going. Pick a bright spot of the few that are there, wherever you want to go.
The Nets they've been in a very interesting situation for the past couple seasons because of the trade they made with Boston to get KG and Paul Pierce that really didn't turn into anything for them. They thought they'd be contending, and they barely made the playoffs and were old and they looked tired. And now these last couple of years, they've had a pretty terrible team, and they haven't really been able to profit off of it because they haven't had their picks. So it's most teams you can at least see like a light at the end of the tunnel because you're losing a bunch of games, but at least you might get like a top 5 pick, and then you might get a player that can really help your team. But instead, they've just been losing, and then having to go to the off season and kind of round up players from free agency and random trades, and like it's hard to do that in any sport, and especially the NBA, to get a bunch of guys. So it's been, like I said, it's been a rough couple of years. One thing I will say is because they don't have an incentive to lose like the other bottom tier teams, they do come out and they play tough, and they have a superstar in Brook Lopez. And we were talking about how the Hawks would have like a tough road with a couple games, and Brooklyn was one of those games because Brooklyn's not just going to roll over. They don't care if they win or lose. Their guys want to win and like try their best and get their stats up and stuff. So it's not like a Lakers situation where they're benching players. Like this team comes out and compete, and it's just unfortunate they haven't been able to get the guys or the picks or anything really for the past couple of years. And like starting next year, they'll actually be able to take steps in the like right direction. Hopefully.
Yeah, well, and then it's also, on the bright side, they have Sean Markson as GM, they have Kenny Atkinson as the head coach, a guy who's like just came up and he was all about player development, which they need, and we're starting to see them unearth a little bit. They've done well with what they've been able to scrap up. The Thad Young trade, maybe having him around this year would have made them a few wins better. We can point to that, but that turns into a draft pick, which is now Karis LeVert, and Karis LeVert looks like a basketball player, playing the 2, playing the 3, was kind of billed as a guy who can do a little bit off the ball, a little with the ball as a wing, which is a nice thing to have. And they're letting him stretch that a little bit. He's taken some threes off the bounce, not just off the catch. With the roster they have right now, the question to me is, and the question they've been trying to answer is Rondé Hollis-Jefferson a 4? He's been playing more of it this year, and Kenny Atkinson had some comments about it lately that's what they're trying to find out, and of course he gets it as reflected by his comments, like he has to get better as a shooter, but they like him to do a little bit of playmaking, maybe a little bit of pick and roll. Looking at some advanced stats, the thing that popped out most to me of anyone on the Nets roster was that Rondé played like 60% of his minutes basically as like a 2 guard last year.
Oh wow.
But yeah, the shooting has to get much better, and that alone would be a huge difference in like seeing his ceiling rise. But also, they do need him to get a little better on defense. Like a guy, like a slasher type who can't shoot as a 4, like he's not Andre Robertson defensively, and like it's weird to say that to like stack a guy after Robertson, like oh he's not there, but that's the thing that I was gonna talk about Robertson when we talk Westbrook a little bit here, but I can do it now. Like Brooklyn has that flexibility where they have 5 that can shoot, but then how long is Brook going to be around? He expires after next season.
And he's always on the trading block and everything,
yeah. Yeah, but at this point, I don't think anyone's really going to need a center, even though he's expiring. That's just going to be jumping after him. I mean, OKC was talked about last year. They're set at center now. The Blazers are probably set. So I don't know. I mean, Charlotte was a team I thought about maybe, next year. That'd be something they tried, but they traded for Miles Plumlee. So
yeah,
you have Miles Plumlee. And again, like making the best of the situation. Like they're still picking up they're scrapping up some draft picks, which means a lot. And we saw with the trade deadline, like some of these hauls, we were like, oh, they didn't get a first, or they didn't get a better first. Like Serge Ibaka, PJ Tucker, Nerlens Noel, all those trades. A lot of people were kind of like, oh, I thought they'd get more. And the Nets, I mean, a lot of it's right place, right team, right time, but they got a first for Bojan Bogdanovic, and that's a first that they weren't going to have, that they didn't have.
Right, they would have nothing. So.
Well, so this year, it's another great chance for them to strike gold in the draft. They're going to have 4 picks, 2 in the first, 2 in the second.
Yeah.
They have the Boston swap, this Washington pick, and then 2 seconds. That's a good chance to do something, because next year they don't have their first. Boston just gets it straight up. But onto a team in the West. You got anything else on the Nets?
No, I like Rondé, and I think he's fun. He's got like a little post-up game. He's like you said, you want to see improvement in his defense, especially like he's a pretty athletic guy, and he kind of reminds me of MKG on Charlotte, where it's just like he's like really athletic and he can get to the basket, but you just want like more. Like he needs to be a better defender or a better shooter or something, because that way he's not like a liability at certain times, and then it is easier to move him to the 4 or move him to the 3 or wherever he needs to play. And people always talk about like the league is moving to small ball and stuff, so depending on what Brooklyn wants to do, if he gets better in one of those 2 things, whether it's defense or shooting, then he becomes a better asset for this team going forward. But yeah,
I mean, MKG is maybe a more interesting one for him, because he hasn't been in the kind of big playoff games, at least, that Robertson's been in. MKG probably like him a little more though. Yeah. As an athlete, I think he has a little leg up there. But shall I get on the Lakers?
Yeah.
The Lakers, in a nutshell, they've been tanking. Everyone knows the story by now. They want to keep their pick this year, which needs to fall in the top 3. They do that. They also get to keep their 2019 first instead of just handing it over to Orlando. And they have this collection that they've built of 6 young guys that, at least to some degree, are interesting. And I think the first question with the Lakers that they have to be answering now that they have new decision making at the top too is, which of these guys can actually play together?
Right.
Because at this point it's clear, like none of these guys are superstars at this point. So who of them can even play together? Because they're trying to answer that with Clarkson and D'Angelo now. They flirted with it with Randall and Nance playing a little together, and then with one of those 2, and now Zubac, who's coming on to at least earn some minutes. And then Brandon Ingram, just because of the position, and he seems to have the highest ceiling. You can just slide him in there. But outside of Ingram, like that, pick any 2 or 3 of those 5 guys. Like who would you be excited about seeing them? Like these guys can play together in a good 5-man lineup 2-3 years from now when they're good again.
Right. I don't know. It's a little tough. they have, like you said, they've made a lot of smart picks, and they've had a lot of good picks. Like they've had good position to get these guys, whether it's Randall or D'Angelo Russell and stuff. The issue is, yeah, they're all kind of like in the same vein, whether it's Ingram and Clarkson and D'Angelo, like they all kind of play the same position. So this year they've got a lot of time to move around some of those guys and start some at certain times and bench other guys, just because they're not looking for W's at this point. So it's a lot of experimentation to see who's going to play. I think Jordan Clarkson's a really good player, and I think that he's really mature. Like if you just like see his interviews and stuff and what he does for the league, and I think he's one of those guys that you want to build your team around. And I think, like you said, I think we both agree that Ingram is like one of the most interesting guys in this team, because he could be really good, especially if he just like gets his body in NBA shape and stuff. And he's just really young, so you don't really know where he is, but we both feel like his ceiling's really high. So I think those are two guys that could play off of each other and play really well, and they don't like step on each other's toes offensively or defensively or anything.
So forget the body, like, and Luke, like, this is right out of Luke Walton's mouth when he's on Bill Simmons' podcast. Like, just get better as a shooter.
Yeah.
Like he's been really bad shooting the ball this year, and you would assume the body at least a little bit is gonna come.
Right.
You don't know how much he's gonna necessarily be able to pack on to that frame with how wiry he is, but like if he just shoots it better,
and it could be a kind of direct situation where everybody's like, oh, he's so skinny, and it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're a good ball player, you're a good ball player. Some guys don't need to be 230 pounds to be able to score baskets and stuff, you know? So I think he has the potential, and he could. And yeah, maybe it's just the transition from college to NBA, but maybe, like, I think he'll become a better shooter, and he's in the right situation. Like, they have time, and they're going to have a lot of good pieces around him.
Yeah, Well, like the second question I wrote down, maybe we should have done that first, but like who's the most important player on the roster? It sounds like we're both saying Ingram.
Yeah, and I think like before this season, I probably would have said D'Angelo Russell, just because he was such a high pick, and this was like the point guard of the future and stuff. And I think even Magic Johnson said that at one point, that like this is their guy. But I think that just he started off on such a bad foot with the organization with the whole Nick Young situation last year. And now, like this year, he's had really bright moments this year. So like we're not counting him out or anything. It's just that maybe this isn't the perfect situation for him right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like him too, and where this is headed is I think we see Jordan Clarkson a lot differently. But with D'Angelo first, this year his minutes are pretty comparable to his rookie year. But his volume of three-point shooting is way up. He's 44% of his shots have been threes so far. This is Wednesday night coming into that. 40% of those threes are catch and shoot, but 32% he's taking them off the bounce. He likes those, and I don't see Ingram ever becoming like a true engine to your offense. Maybe he's your second best guy if, like Walton said, like if he becomes a really good shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he becomes your second best guy, and they like him as a passer, and he was point guard a little bit this year. But with D'Angelo, right now you can say he's a good 3-point shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm sorry, I misread my own stats. He's shooting 40% on catch and shoot threes, and he's shooting 32% on pull-up threes.
Gotcha.
Off the bounce. And the thing for D'Angelo is how good is he gonna get with the in-between game, with the floater and with the mid-range pull-up, because he's not this explosive guy who's gonna finish at the basket and really scare a defense.
Yeah. If
he's coming downhill. And that's the one thing where Ingram can, like you're saying, if he's really gonna explode, if he starts finishing explosively at the basket a little bit more, and that's where the strength can come into play.
Yeah, because he's already super athletic, so if he just gets a little bit stronger, maybe.
So with Clarkson, like at this point, I don't really see much of it's hard for me to see a future where Clarkson and Russell are playing a lot together. Clarkson they're already paying, a little bit older. But Kevin O'Connor pointed this out on the Ringer today. He wrote about D'Angelo playing the two with Clarkson as the point guard,
Right.
where the real fit has to come is like at least one of them needs to become really good defensively. And Magic Johnson came out and said he thinks Jordan Clarkson can be one of the best players in the league, which was no doubt like a motivational ploy, because both guys haven't been very good.
Yeah.
So that's the thing where if you get this third guard in there, you know, if Patrick Beverley's on the Lakers and say he starts with D'Angelo,
Right.
you know, that changes a lot of how people think about the team. And there's a lot of guards, not even necessarily an elite guy like Beverley.
Yeah, it takes the pressure off of even Russell. If you had a Beverly to kind of take that responsibility of guarding the best guard, then Russell can really take over offensively, or vice versa. So yeah, I see what you're saying. One of those guys would have to step up.
And then the front court, like I was really interested to see at the start of this year, Randall and Nance playing together, and that question can't really be answered until we decide if one of those guys can shoot or not. I mean, Julius Randle, he's attempted 70-some threes in his career, basically almost 2 years now, after missing that first one.
Mm-hmm.
So like between those two guys, is one of them gonna emerge as a 3-point shooter?
And I don't think either of them really will. So I think we know, since college, we've kind of known what Julius Randle is and what he can be, and like he had a lot of the comparisons of Zach Randolph and stuff, and I think he's still kind of in that vein. Seems a little bit more athletic, but I think he's more of a power guy. And I don't know if he really fits like the mold of a team that this Laker team wants to become. You know what I mean? Like I feel like he's a good player and he could average 15 and 8 like whatever team he was on. But I don't know if he's necessarily what you want. It's like as your prototypical like forward position. You know what I mean? Like I don't think if you're on a really winning team, that's the guy you want. And I think eventually the Lakers will have to make a decision on him.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to get in the lab and like just design 2 players for this team, what they really, I mean, if they end up keeping this top 3 and they get Ball or Fultz,
right?
You would assume they're going to try it. They would do that, and then you add some more scoring punch, and then if you got in the lab to get one more guy, you need Serge Ibaka, 10 years younger. If you put a stretch big that can also guard the rim, that really props up Randall, because then, you know, if they keep this pick, they take one of those 2 point guards, and things turn out, and then you just find, even if you just play a stretch big, just like one that can only shoot, I think this offense would get really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have one of those young guards, you have D'Angelo, but then you also have this motion offense where you have Randall and Ingram, who they like their passing ability. They can do a little bit, at least. And that'd be interesting.
Yeah. That's gonna be a whole. If they get one of these top 2 picks, that's a whole nother wrinkle. Because especially Ball and Fultz, like those are pretty like can't miss guys in a lot of people's eyes, and that's just like the Lakers have drafted really well. So I think that would be. It's just a matter of like they have a ton of pieces, and they're all super young. They're all like 23 and younger. So it's just like weeding out who can play. Like you said, like who can play together, who's gonna mix together, who's gonna make the most coherent offense, and that's gonna be like. I mean, I think the move to get Magic Johnson in right now was really smart, because now is when you start making the push to make this Laker team better. You've left the Kobe years behind. You've got all these picks together. You're probably about to get another one if you can stay the course. So it's just they're about to ramp up. This is like they have a really bright future. I feel like they just have to be smart.
Well, but the thing is, like they need a lot more.
And like
if they they need more really good players.
Yeah.
If you just dropped Paul George onto that team today, they're probably not a team that's making much noise in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They need so.
But I feel like everybody's so young right now, and I feel like that's why.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, especially they just need a really good two-way center, which I mean, I guess Jim Buss thought Timofey Mozgov was going to be, and that's. I mean, honestly I fully expect them to be really bad again next year, and to try to be bad, and then enter that Paul George summer. Because all this stuff you've piled up, you don't want to give a bunch of it away, bring them in, and then
it doesn't work.
Like you're even further back, even though you've added a good player.
Yeah. You're
Probably not going to really get too far. So yeah, I mean this all comes back to the two contracts they dished out this summer, and that it's going to force them to accelerate their thinking so much faster than they would have needed to.
Yeah.
Because next year Julius Randle's already going to be up for an extension, and then they basically can't extend him. If they do, and they aren't able, I mean, here's the choice. If you extend Randle, you need to dump those contracts to have max cap space again in the future.
To get that big free agent.
So then, are you gonna attach you're not gonna attach your 18 first round pick as a sweetener to dump those guys.
Right.
So I fully expect Julius Randle extension talks to just go dry, and they're just gonna have to ride that out and hope they can dump. I mean, if I'm Magic, I'm calling Tibbs every day, and I'm just trying to sell Luol Deng to him. And just at least if you send him out, you send that $16 million out.
Right.
That's something, because Mozgov, unless they add a first, I don't think they can get rid of that team.
It'd be insane to get rid of him.
And I expect him to think about Clarkson too. A guy making double digits, he's under control, so that could be appealing if a team likes him. I expect him to see what's out there for him over the summer too.
Yeah. I mean, they have to think about the future, and yeah, you're right. Like, it's weird because they do have these pieces, but they don't have like the superstar player that they're building around that they have. So they're going to be looking for that. So they kind of have to be smart with these contracts and who they keep. And yeah, I think that Mozgov contract and Deng too. That's gonna. I mean, you said it when it happened. Like, that is gonna like haunt them. I feel like so. Hopefully they can pull together though.
Yeah. Anyways, people hate when you beat stuff in the ground, even if teams deserve it. Example, James Harden trade. So we'll go on to our main event. We're talking about Russell Westbrook. And it's been a crazy media season with everything around Westbrook. There's the talk of him being angry. The numbers are up, the usage is up, and then you even have a little going between the two teams. It's not even just about Westbrook and Durant, it's about the Thunder, it's about the Warriors. Both teams have been kind of silly, been kind of sensitive about some stuff. It's just been so much. We can start, I guess, with Bill Simmons, who wrote a big column about Westbrook. What did you take away from that?
I think the reason I like the Simmons article was that it was from the perspective of like a real basketball fan and not like a journalist or a GM or anything. Like, it's just from a fan's perspective that like what we're seeing this year is incredible, and it's like we might see it again, but like chances are we never see anything like this again, where a guy is just, like you said, the usage rating is like insanely high compared to like any other season of any other NBA players ever had before, and he's literally doing everything for this team. Like 90% of the offense goes to him, whether it's him scoring, him passing to the scorer, him just attacking and leading to an open shot. Like everything goes through him, and it's not even like the defense has a choice in the matter. Like it's just whether Russ is hitting shots or not, which dictates the flow of the game and whether he's gonna pass more or score more. And it's nice to see because Westbrook's taken like a beating this year from the media. Like he's been praised a ton for all the triple doubles he's got and stuff, but he's also taken a beating because a lot of people don't like watching this kind of basketball. So it's nice to see somebody who's just generally enjoying like one of the most phenomenal NBA seasons we're ever going to see from an NBA player.
Well, it's interesting you said that you talked about him taking a beating, because I was about to come in and say, because you talked about the unprecedented usage rate, I was going to say all this stuff in a way, it's also doing him a little bit of a favor, because you think about it, like, go back to those bad Kobe Lakers teams that Kobe had to drag into the playoffs.
Right.
He seemed to take a lot more hate in the moment than Westbrook is now. Where Westbrook has that narrative where he may still get it. I guess that kind of it depends. I mean, especially now, it just depends like who you follow online as to like how much of that is of Westbrook hate you can see. But I don't think he gets it nearly as bad because he kind of has this. He has this in his pocket where it's much more unpopular to say, well, I don't know. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
A little bit?
I think people, whether they know it or not, feel a little, they don't feel bad, but like, you understand that he went from having a top 5 player on his team to now, he basically has the same roster as last year. I mean, other than Taj Gibson and McDermott now, but he basically came to the season with the same roster, except for Ibaka and Durant, 2 of the best players that he's ever played with. And now he's just surrounded by a bunch of guys, so I think there's a little bit of like sympathy for the guy, because you're like, well, yeah, this is what he has to do to win. And I think Kobe was never likable like that. Like, people didn't hate Westbrook before, and now it's like you have a reason added on to not to hate him. Like, it's a reason to like praise him. Whereas Kobe was kind of like, he always had the ball hog stigma, and even with Shaq, like it was this terrible thing, even though they were winning championships. So yeah, I think it is a little weird, like the whole dynamic that the media has with him.
Well, so, and then more media stuff here. MVP talk is just a daily thing now, and it's like, I think of like that game at the fair where you're shooting the water and then like your horses are racing, like each time you hit the target. Is it the best way to do it where the MVP race is almost made out to be one of those races where like, oh, James Harden had another 40-point triple-double, so he's moved this far in the race. Like, is that?
Yeah.
I understand why it happens, but like, and like the Kawhi Leonard as MVP moment when he hit a 3 and then he blocked Harden.
Right, and then that just like adds to the resume immediately. Yeah.
Is that a good way to think about it, where just like one big stat line or like a week, kind of like in our minds we're like treating it like one of those races, whereas the much more traditional way where I lean is like you just need to get to the end and then look at the body of work.
Yeah, and I think that's how a majority of the voters will look at it. I think people who are on TV who have to talk every day, that's how they this is the year to like do it, to like really pick it apart each and every like couple games, be like, all right, this is a defining moment. James Harden, like this is a point in his direction, you know. It kind of reminds me of the KD season that he won MVP, and he had just a month where he went insane and just like dominated the league, and then that kind of like propelled, like he kind of got to ride it out for the rest of the season. Like, not that he wasn't playing phenomenal, but it was just like that giant 35-day like madness for him. But like it seems like this year for every player, it's just every day is like that. Like Westbrook has, even tonight he has a triple double and he goes 6 from 6 from the field and 6 from 6 from free throw, and that's like an NBA record or something. So that like in somebody's head, like that's like another notch that's appointed Westbrook, and everybody else is falling back. So it is weird. It's like intriguing to see how people like think and switch their opinions every day.
Yeah. So we'll see when the votes come out, because I think I think that culture of how it's talked about on a daily basis. I think we might see a little bit of that play out, but that's probably a lot to do with my personal bias as someone who's leaning LeBron.
Yeah, I think everybody.
So I've done it too. I said where I'm leaning, so I'm doing it too.
Yeah.
So we hit that, and then I guess the big question, because like a lot of it's like you dive into the numbers, the usage rate pops off the screen, and then just like it's just like overwhelming to look at the enormity of the stats he's putting up sometimes. And then the question eventually comes up with a lot of people is this the best way for the Thunder to use him, or like does that even not matter? Because some people see Westbrook as like this insane person all the time that just like the now I do what I want, that is it, like.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's a two-part question. Is this the best way for him to use his talents, and does that even matter? Like, is this just what he is now?
I think the best way to use his talents would be a Harden situation. Like, Harden's doing what Westbrook's doing, but he's doing it to a more successful degree, I feel. But the issue is Harden's team compared to Westbrook's team isn't really comparable because.
So keep it the same, but give him.
Yeah, just
give him more 40% 3-point shooters.
Yeah, give him shooters. That's like I'm on the boat where I think this Thunder team is like, other than Westbrook, is pretty terrible. And honestly, some of the best players on the team now are Taj Gibson and McDermott, and they like just got there. So, but I just think if he had like legitimate shooters around the team, like it would just be a better situation. Like you would see the same things you're seeing with Harden. You would see more trust with his teammates. You would see the W's racking up more. You would see a more consistent, like a better product to watch. So I kind of feel like that's not his fault, but at the same time, I don't think Westbrook and Harden are the same guys. Like I think this is kind of what Westbrook is, and I feel like maybe even if his team even if he had the same exact team as the Rockets roster right now, Westbrook is still out there trying to score just as much, you know what I mean? So I feel like it's a little bit like I don't think this is the best way to handle him, and I don't think this is the best use of his talents, but I do think that he's totally fine with doing this. Like I think that he's like of course he would want a better record and everything, but I think that he sees this as a good way to get wins and like continue his career, you know what I mean?
Yeah, this is such a loaded question. I just don't think it gets treated like that enough. Because when you ask, like, is this the best thing for him to be doing? You have to take into account like the head coach Billy Donovan. You have to really look hard at the roster and like how good are his teammates and like what are their strengths. And then the unanswerable question, which is like we don't know. We're not in the locker room. We don't work for the Thunder. Of like, how much of it is like Russ really wants to do this? Does he really have like his mindset? Like I'm gonna win MVP. I'm gonna prove this. Like we don't really know like the balance of that in his head. But you brought up the teammates, so let's go there, because I mean that's another daily thing that comes up and it almost. In a way, it's almost gone too far. Like that, his teammates are just terrible. Because, so we'll talk about it. You're not too high on him, as you said,
right.
But it gets brought up so much, and it's just this passing thing that's like so understood. Like nobody really dives in and then says like, Steven Adams wasn't really worth that extension because. And then lay out a case.
Yeah.
Like nobody's doing that. Or people say they don't have shooting, but like, and yet no one really revisits the fact that like that was the one thing that probably cost them the most while Durant was still there, is they couldn't put one extra guy on the wing to just hit shots and play passable defense.
Right. But a lot of those
that last thing, probably the hardest thing to do. I mean,
yeah.
Literally every team wants more wings that can do that.
Ask the Clippers. But I think just those things get like erased when you have Durant on your team. You know what I mean? Like those, you overlook all those flaws, and like you know they're there, but it's not as like glaring as right now. So you take him and Ibaka off the team, and suddenly you're like, oh yeah, Steven Adams isn't like very dominant on the offensive end, and like Roberson is like a complete negative on the offensive end. So I like Steven Adams, and I think he's a good playoff NBA center. He's one of the key guys that you want if this Thunder team was like one game away from being in the championship, and then probably could have beat Cleveland like 4 times out of 10 or 5 times out of 10 or whatever, you know. So it's not like he's like the worst ever. It's just that he's not for this team, but he can't be the only thing. And like Oladipo's a good player, and Simmons actually points out that Oladipo's probably overachieving for a guy who like doesn't get the ball a ton of time because it is going through Westbrook so much.
Oladipo, he's shooting a hair under 40% on 4.5 catch and shoot threes per game,
which is like great. So I just think that the problem is like if you take Westbrook off this team, they're not very good, and I think if Westbrook scales it back, doesn't take as many shots, isn't as ball dominant, isn't whatever, I also think they're not very good. But there's no way to like test that theory, because there's no way Westbrook was ever gonna just do that for like a 5-game streak or whatever. He might there might be a game where he doesn't play very well, but there was never gonna be a point in the season where we got to see an experiment with that. But I think this was the best. The way he has approached the season was the best way to go, and I think this is how you maximize wins for this Thunder team.
And moving forward, because Oladipo and Adams, their extensions kick in next season.
Mm-hmm.
So day one of the off season, even with Taj coming off the books, Nick Collison up for a new deal, Robertson coming up, that's really it outside of sub $1 million guys.
Yeah.
They're already above the cap. Going forward, 62 million plus are committed to Oladipo, Adams, and Cantor.
Right. And those are like the key guys for this team right now, and it's not enough. So it's like, where do they go from here?
Well, and the real key question, and this goes back to how valuable Ibaka is, because it's not just like how good of a player are you, like you have these goggles on where you're just looking at one guy and evaluating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Serge Ibaka probably won't make an all-star team.
Mm-hmm.
So like some people like just look through that lens too much, but even if you have to pay him more, like that guy being on the court changes the way you can play.
Yeah, he was perfect for that Thunder team that set up. He was a guy who could spread the floor. He played defense. He didn't need the ball in a team that had 2 guys who were extremely ball dominant and could score like 70 points.
Although that seemingly did become one of the problems.
That like he was getting demanding of the ball and stuff. But like when he was in his role, like it was like perfect. Like his skill set, along with the fact that he'd been with those guys and stuff, and that trading him for Oladipo created a problem, because now you don't. Like it's impossible to fill that hole. So basically, you're starting a new strategy and everything, and maybe that was like led to Durant leaving and stuff. So I don't know.
Well, some of the hope at this point is probably that Sabonis can at least do the shooting part,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe a little bit off the bounce, or as a post player. But like, if Ibaka never got those chances, it's not going to happen with Sabonis.
Right.
That's the one thing. Like,
that's what you can't fill that hole.
Well, that's the one, like Sam Presti, just like talking himself up way too much, is with Sabonis. Like when when all the times they've tried to sell that trade, like all these extra things that you think Sabonis might do, like where's the real room for that?
Mm-hmm.
Because it never happened with Ibaka, so why are you suddenly going to do it for Sabonis?
Yeah.
Even if Westbrook dials it down a little bit, it's not like that's something going to happen for him. So the question is like, do you move on from Enes Kanter? I think is the question that is staring them in the face, because without that, you have no way of adding impact players to your team. unless they just absolutely nail like a first round pick in the 20s.
Yeah, or they got some like crazy. It would have to be like a LeBron situation where a guy came and didn't want any money and he just wanted to play with Westbrook, and that would be like unprecedented. So yeah, I agree. And another issue that comes up, and Bill talks about this in the article and in his podcast, is that like maybe this Westbrook style, like we don't know how NBA players really think, and maybe it's different, but like, does anybody really want to play this style with Westbrook? And it looks like it took a toll on Durant. And so if you're a really good player, not even up to what, like Durant's obviously up to his skill level, but if you're just a good player and you're trying to be on a team, are you thinking about the Thunder and thinking like, oh, I'm gonna have to watch Westbrook run around and dominate the ball for 30 minutes of the game, you know?
Yeah, I think moving forward, the Thunder are going to be the absolute poster child of like not the top case study in like studying all these big money contracts that everyone, all these guys seem to think if they're simply like, I'm a starting level player, give me 20 million. Because moving forward, even 2-3 years out, when the cap is maybe like 115. Up to them by now. I mean, next year it's 102. If you think through that number, 102, starting next year, they're spending half the cap on just Oladipo and Russ,
Which is crazy.
and then even as it grows, if they re-sign Westbrook,
Yeah.
they're still going to be
Maybe
at about 50%.
Yep.
And so like it's still insane, because then like you can't give that much to every starter, because then you're spending all your money on 5 guys.
Yeah, and it hurts the team. I know these guys want to get paid, but like it hurts your team, and you have to see that. Like if you look around and you're looking at, if you're Westbrook and you're looking at Oladipo and you're thinking we make half the money on this team, like you guys aren't good enough together to be making half the money on this team. So it's insane. I know they didn't have a choice, but it's insane.
But that's and that's like the ultimate thing is like you can't no one, I don't really think anyone really tries to like bash the players for this. I don't think anyone, some people are really angry about it, but like at the end of the day, someone opens up the checkbook, here's more money than you deserve.
Right.
You're gonna take it. Here's more money than you maybe deserve for this job.
Right.
You take the money.
And it's guaranteed.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, like you can't be upset with the player. I mean, like teams are allowed to say no.
Yeah. It's the organization's fault.
When Mozgov counters back, no, I want 4 years for 60 million. You're allowed to say no.
Yeah.
And you can go sign other players.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I just think the thing with this roster is like the roster isn't bad. They just really need a third guard who's really good, and then maybe something else on the wing, which maybe is McDermott. They get another full season of him to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
But even just like add another guard. Like we talked about this usage with Westbrook, but I mean Oladipo maybe their next biggest offensive threat.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't even share the court as much as you'd like with Russ, because they put him out there to prop up the second unit.
Right.
But and then that's the one thing that kind of hurts them, is the on-off numbers with Russ get talked about a lot, and just like they just can't die with Russ off the court. You know, they need to salvage those minutes. But they've been playing point guards with Oladipo when he is in there with the second unit. They're playing point guards that just aren't good.
Yeah, and when Westbrook's out of the game, it's kind of like praying that they can keep the point differential where it's at, you know. So that really hurts you when you're like really relying on one guy. So yeah, and just a little bit more on the contract thing. It is like you can't expect these guys to turn down money and stuff. And if you look at it, the guys who do, they're in really stable situations. Whether it was Tim Duncan or Dirk Nowitzki, like they're guys who are in championship teams and really stable with their organizations. So like even though like the Thunder's in this situation, it is like the organization's fault for kind of constructing these guys and making the norm to pay Mozgov $60 million. Like it's on the league.
So let's talk Robertson. Like he didn't get extended, but he's up at the end of the year. Like what's your number for him? Will you give Andre Robertson? Will you give me 4 years, $60 million? If I'm your starting three. I'm one of the best lockup wings in the league.
Right. I mean,
If you build the roster correctly, Sam Presti, you can play me at the 4 more, and I don't hurt you as much shooting threes off the backboard.
you have to believe that your roster is tight enough to, because he is a liability on offense, and I don't think that's going to change over the summer. So you have to make sure the rest of your roster is built. Like you said, the team has to be built to where that negative doesn't outweigh the positive he brings to the team. And like, I don't know if you pay him 60, but I think he's a guy who could play well with Westbrook because he doesn't need the ball and stuff, and so he does serve a purpose on the defensive end without taking anything away from the offensive end. But you have to make sure the rest of the guys around him are good enough, and I don't think this current roster, you would keep him. I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean that. I wanna nail you down to a number, but I mean like if they move on from him, you start McDermott at the 3,
Right.
and you open up the spacing, you open up the floor. But then if you want to be a good team, you get into a playoff series. Who's guarding Kevin Durant?
Exactly.
Who's guarding Kawhi Leonard?
Exactly. Especially in the West.
That comes into play. So can I have 3 years, $42 million, with a player option for a 4th?
Yeah,
14 a year?
Right, 14. So I'm trying to think. I think that's fine. I mean, it's insane to think how big these NBA contracts are going to be now. I think you kind of have to because of what he brings. And maybe somebody comes along and offers him way more money than that. So I don't know. I think that's a fine number just because of what he can do and what you're ultimately playing for the playoffs and to play against these tough wings who you have to have somebody to guard. So I think I'm fine with 14 million. I just think that the Thunder are in a tough situation, man. I think their roster is not built. It wouldn't surprise me next year if, especially if they don't get the pieces that they want, that they don't make the playoffs, or they're really struggling to get the 8th seed or something. So at that point, is it worth it to give him the money, thinking of guarding these guys?
Yeah, I mean the shooting thing with Robertson's interesting. Like I remember a Jared Dudley podcast. I think he was with Chris Vernon, and he was talking about how over one off season he really put his mind to it. Like I need to become a better 3-point shooter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he went to P3 is where he went. But anyways, the main point of the message Dudley was preaching was like, you've got to take game-like shots.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that really fascinates me is like how many high-level college and pro guys that need to get better from behind the arc, how many of them are doing that? And how many of them are taking them half speed,
right,
low intensity, in an empty gym. They never try, they don't practice shooting them off on the run. How much does that come into it? That's one of those things we can't know all the time. So
I mean, you would hope with NBA trainers and stuff, they would have somebody in there telling them to do that. But yeah, I think if you're focusing on form, but I don't think that's Roberson's problem, then yeah, it's okay to sit there half speed. But that's a good point. Everything you need to be doing in practice, especially early in your career, needs to be at kind of the game speed level, so that way you're actually making improvements. But I think with guys like Kawhi wasn't a very good shooter in college, and now he's really good. So I think there's a certain ceiling for guys, and you just know whether they're going to make that improvement or not. And I don't think Roberson's one of those guys who's going to become a 39% 3-point shooter.
Yeah. So we've gone a while here on Westbrook, but I had a few more things. My big thing with him is that we attach ourselves to these media narratives just because they're cool and because they sound fun. And the Westbrook one is the one that just like it's in my craw, and it's just like this mountain that I want to die on. It's just. It's not that people do it. It's just that it's so overwhelming. Did you just wait for the camera? Oh. And it's this whole idea, like because of like Westbrook, he's come out and said it that like on court, he's putting on a persona. That's not the person he is 24 hours a day. He's even said off the court, I'm not like that at all.
Right.
And I just. And I'm just like the boring guy in the room, like they're like I get why people would think this is a dumb thing to say or to argue about, but just like I don't like that he's perceived like this. Because once you take it so far, it's like it's more about all these vines and all these tweets that get passed around like about how mad he is 24 hours a day. And it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna watch how good he is at basketball.
Right. And that builds into his narrative, and that affects people's opinions on him and the MVP race and everything. They're taking that personally, you know.
Well, and yeah, just like who he is off the court is like, I wish we would focus more on that because I'm like, it's really interesting to me. Like he's this like he's like just this super like close to himself guy. He keeps the circle tight. We've heard about how he. When he trusts you, he's loyal, but then when he doesn't trust you, like you're gone. And like this, he's like one of these big fat, like one of the first guys who really get brought in this whole like NBA fashion, like how we pay so much attention to it to this point.
Yep.
Like I feel like we could like put more shine on that, and I think it's more interesting to receive coverage of a guy who's like that, where there's like this extreme of like he's this persona on the court, he's yelling and screaming, he's 100 miles an hour, but then off the court, he's totally chill, he's relaxed. He just goes home, he picks out outfits, he chills with his wife. Like,
yeah.
I think that's a lot more interesting. And I want to read from the GQ thing about him before the season, because we had, and this really kicked it off, because we had, going into the season, we had a big Kevin Durant Rolling Stone feature, and then we had this GQ one.
Right.
But Daniel Riley, who wrote the piece, got to this exact thing on Russ. I'll read a little bit here. But what does it feel like to know that how people will perceive him, even if he doesn't perceive himself that way? And then, quote from Russ, I just don't care. A lot of people don't really know me. All they know is what they see on TV, so I don't mind it because I play basketball different than how I am off the court.
Right.
When I'm on the court, everybody thinks I'm angry and I'm mad. I'm fine with that. But that's why I think some people are confused until they see me off the court. They'll run into me and be like, oh, I thought you were going to be mad. But why would I be mad? End quote. And then does the characterization wear on him? For me, I feel like if they're talking about you, then you're doing something right. When they stop talking about you, then that's when you should worry.
Yeah.
I mean, that last sentence, it's just like, I just want to scream it from a mountain. And I don't know. Am I taking this too seriously? Am I onto something, but just like too fixed on it?
No, yeah, I see what you're saying. I think it's for the casual fan especially, and for media people who want to build a narrative, it's easier to sit there and just look at how he is on the court and look how he's perceived in the court and take that as gospel for how he is off the court as well. So I see what you're saying, and I think a lot of guys, especially with the fashion stuff, because that's really like, with no other league, it's really infected the NBA, like post-game interviews and stuff, and the walking. Every player has a camera on them walking in the court, and they're being judged on what they wear and stuff. And that's something you really push. So he's definitely interesting. He's definitely, there's more to him than just on the court. But I think it's easier for people to just take that character that he is on the court and just ride with that and say, oh, that's who Russ Westbrook is. I wouldn't want to meet up with him in a dark alley, all this stuff, where he's probably this really nice guy, but that's no fun, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't feel like enough people read this.
Yeah.
I want to read that last thing again. But that's why I think some people are confused until they see me off the court. They'll run into me and be like, oh, I thought you were going to be mad, but why would I be mad? It's just like, it's... That was really well written, and it touched on it went. I mean, it covered everything, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
But last thing on 2 more things. Let's go quick here, and that's mainly on me. I need to go quick.
We're good.
First, shout out to Billy Donovan. I think he's a pretty good NBA coach here in year 2, and of course, like, much of the story is still to be written.
Mm-hmm.
But my thing with him is like, and I think this way because of all the talk about how much the team, like, the roster sucks. Like, I think he does a good job of, like, playing around with lineups and trying different guys. I mean, the Sabonis stuff has become a little divisive, especially with guys who are watching games on a regular basis. They're just not very good yet, and that they're almost kind of forcing it, and that maybe they'd even be better off even before they got Taj if they started someone else or played someone else more.
Right.
I think that was an alignment thing, which I talked really about Presti, like, really playing him up, and I think that was just like an organizational thing. Where they sat down, they said, we want to give this guy a chance right now. We want to be able to say good things. We want to build his confidence up. So not all that bad.
Right.
And I think we'll see that going forward, because I think in the off season we're going to get a classic, like, because Taj just started starting at the 4.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're really going to get hit over the head with the stat of, like, how many games. I got the number here. How many games he started? He started 64 games.
Right.
And I think that number was very important, at least up top. Maybe not to Donovan, but they're gonna go back and say, he's the guy who started 64 games from us. He's gonna grow in our culture, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
But so outside of that, like, as far as Donovan goes, like he's still, like, he's tried to salvage Kyle Singler.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's on their books. He's on their books for 2 more full seasons.
Yeah.
And, like, what? Like, good for him for trying to get something out of that, because how many guys would just park him on the bench?
Yeah. He's handled this year really well.
He's maybe. I think some people were itching to see Alex Abrinas more often than we did from the jump, but eventually we got some of them. He's shooting it pretty well. I mentioned, like, the Oladipo thing, having him prop up the second unit. I think that's been important for them.
For sure.
And, like, we saw last year in the playoffs. Like, sometimes we saw him go mega big lineup with Cantor and Adams even together sometimes, and then also, of course, Ibaco's in there.
Right.
And then and you can say it's not that hard to find, but look at where they ended up, where they basically had this death lineup that was beating the Warriors' death lineup,
mm-hmm.
where you threw Dion Waiters in there, and that's one of those things that's, like, so hard to keep track of. But that lineup, kind of like those Pacers teams that challenged LeBron's Heat, like, that's one of those lineups that's just always going to stick in my head as just one of those short-term things we saw, but it was so fun
mm-hmm.
that we just to have had it at all.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, it goes back to the start of last year, where he was, like, brand new coach. They lost Scott Brooks, who Westbrook and Durant were, like, big fans of, and he came in and they kind of struggled through that season. Like, a lot of people forget that, and it kind of took him, but he wasn't afraid to experiment with the lineup, especially the starting lineup. So, and then he kind of figured out, like, always having either Westbrook or Durant on the court at a time with the bench, and so he's definitely not afraid to do certain things and mess with certain lineups and get guys in there. And I think that translated into this year, being able to kind of experiment, and now he's gotten, like, they didn't really have a lot to do with the roster and moving pieces, and now that they got McDermott and Taj, they get to work out and see what happens more. So yeah, I think he's handled the season really well, and this would be a really tough season for a second-year head coach, any second-year head coach to handle, just dealing with everything that happened this offseason and now with Westbrook this whole year.
And the thing I've started to learn is, like, there's always a little wrinkle or a little layer that we don't always see, or that we can't always discover until they give it to us. Like, last year, another one of those things that, like, it happened, but some people wanted it to happen sooner, was Durant and Westbrook, the staggering.
Right.
And it finally happened, but then it comes out where Durant on his own just outright says, like, I like playing the first 12 minutes. I like playing all the way through the first quarter. And it's like, oh, you know, like maybe Kevin Durant spoke up, like when they tried to broach that before.
Yeah.
And oh, that's what Kevin said. Okay, like let's just keep doing it. We're really good.
Yeah.
So we can afford it. And like the other thing was like Anthony Morrow, like, I had these memories of like, I don't know, like a good season or a good stretch Anthony Morrow had 5 years ago. It's like, oh, like yeah, he's a good catch and shoot.
Right.
He has that quick release thing, which Klay Thompson kind of has too, where like even if he catches it up here, he'll shoot right away. But like Anthony Morrow, that's not who Anthony Morrow is anymore. He just couldn't make shots, which we found out.
Yeah, because he had that crazy summer league where he made like 90% of his threes or something crazy. So yeah, and then now you see it and it just doesn't translate to this Thunder team.
I just have memories of him in those old New Jersey Nets jerseys too. But yeah, anyways, good stuff there. Ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right, last thing, let's go. Let's say 30 to 45 seconds. We'll do our out of bounds.
Well, I just wanted to bring something up really quick. This is something Nick Wright talked about today on Colin Cowherd's show, and it was to do with playoffs. And he was saying, because the resting issue has kind of been like a big issue this year, I guess kind of been a big issue, but big enough that Adam Silver felt he had to send a memo and everything. So I just want to get your thoughts on it really quick. Nick Wright was saying that what they should do is basically whatever the season series goes. So if Golden State beats the Spurs 2-1 in the season series, that's the team who gets home court advantage in the playoffs. And that way, even if you want to rest your guys, you wouldn't be doing it in the big games. Warriors wouldn't rest against the Rockets. They wouldn't rest against the Spurs because those are the national TV games and those are the games that really affect the NBA when they rest. So I just want to see what your thoughts would be on that and if it shakes up the playoff format a little too much.
It's not a terrible idea, but the idea of it doesn't tempt me at all. Because like it's so obvious that the schedule's too long.
Yeah.
And I mean we still see that there's two sides. I mean Stan Van Gundy had some comments the other night, kind of make it pretty clear that he's on the side of like we're too soft today. But I mean that's why I think, were we doing a shoot around? One of our last episodes I was just saying like I don't really want to talk about it because it's something that the league and the Players Association have to talk about, about shortening the schedule and whether it's actually going to happen. And we had this new CBA come and go, and the biggest thing we got out of it was the over 36 is now the over 38. It's like, okay, Chris Paul, LeBron, you guys won, but like the schedule, I mean, it just kind of is what it is. And I don't know. It's just about the fan, you know?
Yeah.
It's about the fan who had those tickets, that lived in LA, the kid that really wanted to see LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love and didn't get to do it. I don't know. I mean, it happens.
I'm with you. I think the whole controversy is kind of silly, but obviously the NBA thinks there's something there. So
actually, no. My answer is, if you could afford Laker tickets, you basically could just buy League Pass for a year.
True.
So like, yeah, I get it. You want to see him in person. Wait till the day of. Take advantage of SeatGeek and all this stuff.
Yeah.
If they sponsored us, I could plug a code right now. And yeah, if you live in a non-LA market, Bucks tickets, I don't know, are like $5. So like nothing, it's not gonna bother me if LeBron rests.
Cool.
All right, out of bounds. I think this will be something we'll be running back and we'll try to develop more cool segments.
Yeah.
These cool names. But out of bounds, non-basketball thing, or watching, listening to something that we know the other isn't aware of, because we know each other well enough that we know sometimes there's stuff that we're not necessarily seeing, and also just like it's so hard, you can't just keep up with everything.
Yeah.
But I went first last time, I believe, so this time we're going short, but you go ahead.
Okay, cool. Well, this is the thing. You've actually heard of it. You actually asked me about it earlier, but I think it's definitely worth watching. The Netflix
I knew you were gonna know this.
The Netflix Dave Chappelle specials came out. Dave Chappelle is my favorite comedian in the whole world. I grew up on Chappelle's show. I was 8 years old watching Chappelle's show, sneaking into my living room, watching my dad's DVD set of the Chappelle show. I was totally in love with him. I missed him while he was gone. I've been waiting for a stand-up special for like 10 plus years. These two specials are hilarious. They're basically in the same vein of his old stuff. I don't know if you've seen like his old specials, but he touches a lot on race, and Dave Chappelle is such a good storyteller. Like he's so famous and he makes so much money that he's just around so many weird and interesting situations because he's around these situations that none of us can relate to because of his stature, but he can make it so like personal and relatable just because he has such a like cynical view on everything. But both the shows are hilarious. One is in Hollywood and one is in El Paso, Texas. So it's like two different worlds, two different type of stand-up things, two different perspectives. But especially the El Paso one, I was cracking up last night. I think they're great. They're a total step in direction. It was well worth Netflix's $60 million to pay him for these.
He made $60 million.
$60 million off of 3 specials. These were the first 2. So yeah.
Do we know when the third one's coming?
No, I don't think they've released it yet.
Yeah. I knew you were gonna say this, and I wanted to think of like a clever way to be like fake mad. Because of course I'm gonna watch. I added it to my what's it called on Netflix?
Queue.
My list.
Yeah, your queue.
Is it called the queue?
Yeah.
I added it to my list. But last night I was catching up on John Oliver,
Oh, okay.
and eventually
Amazing.
I had like 4 episodes sitting, so like it meant like a lot of the stuff was like
Yeah.
it's covering the news, so like I gotta keep up on it. So. Anyways, this weekend I'm gonna give out. This is gonna be what I'm going to watch. This weekend I'm going to watch the women's college basketball tournament.
Ew.
The men's tournament. I don't have a ton of rooting interest. I'm kind of jaded because SDSU hasn't made it for 2 years now. So like I have just like this. I have like this hole in my heart where like I just want to ignore it and be mad. Buzz Williams is doing studio work, so I'll watch that just for Buzz. But I'm not too in love with any of the games, so I'm gonna watch the women's side. Of course, UConn they're playing UCLA. That'll be on my radar. I mean, all the 1 through 3s are still in it, so a lot of chalk to watch. But now that it's Sweet 16, I'm probably gonna be able to bounce around all the games pretty well. So I want to, like everyone's trying to see like who's gonna challenge UConn. So I'm gonna try to bounce around those games and kind of dive better into the women's game because I love the people that combat people on Twitter who say women's basketball sucks. But gotta start somewhere, walking the walk myself, or actually paying attention to it, to where you can be in that same position too.
Yeah, and I think we're like 2 random outliers because like I love WNBA basketball and like you're really into just the whole women's basketball thing. So it's like I think we're definitely in the minority there. And I think a fun thing about the college basketball thing is that UConn is like NCAA women's basketball has a villain. Like UConn is like the big giant, and everybody else is trying to take them down. So like those games are exciting to watch, and to see those girls compete and everything is really fun and interesting. Whereas like the men's side, it's just a free for all. Like everybody's going at it. So yeah, it's just different perspectives on what you're trying to see.
Yeah, and those games. Okay, here's my. I did a rant last week. I did a really dumb rant. But I didn't think of one that I really wanted to do, but that just brought me to one. The women's tournament is on the ESPN family of networks. The men's tournament is, of course, on CBS.
Right.
I don't remember if it was this year or one of the more recent ones, but like there's that March Madness app where you can watch the men's games on those networks if you're a TV subscriber. And at least as recently as a couple years ago, you used to be able to watch full game replays. And I absolutely love that they introduced that, but it's not there anymore. I haven't done the research to see why, which I probably should have done, but that really bugs me about it, because I'm like a sit down and watch one game kind of guy. But now with ESPN, like, shout out to these being on ESPN, because with Watch ESPN, go back, watch full games.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah. NCAA, they gotta get that. They gotta get that feature back. That was so clutch. But I don't know.
It's probably some money thing.
I don't know. Maybe. They should get it back though. I think that's it. Oh, you talked about like in WNBA. Funny enough, we started and we liked the name Free Basketball Podcast, but I decided we go Free NBA Podcast because we are mostly talking NBA.
Yeah.
A little bit because Free Basketball Podcast is too long to be a handle on some sites, and I just wanted to have that across the board. But then also, I thought we can run with this, and I know we both watch WNBA, so hopefully this summer, maybe coming soon.
Yeah.
Free WNBA Podcast.
Ew.
Because it's too perfect. Like, the schedules line up where you can catch a lot of it in the summer when there isn't NBA action going on yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And it's like an untouched source. I feel like not a lot of focus on WNBA season, so it'll be perfect.
Yeah. I want to make like a Brandon Wardell themed joke about like being in a boardroom and market opportunity. But
We're respecting women hours out here.
all right, I think that's it. We're done here. Free NBA Podcast. We're here on YouTube, also SoundCloud and iTunes. We'll put this audio up, but also we have our daily show. 5 minutes, catch you up on everything that happened that day in the NBA. We call that our OT, our overtimes. Let you get in, get out, and then get on with your day. Other than that, we'll be back soon. Check back for more shootarounds too, where we go longer like this. We'll be saying bye to some more teams not making it, and then we'll be here through the playoffs. But I don't know. We gotta get our Billy thumbnail.
Classic thumbnail picture.
Shout out to our favorite javelin thrower. But other than that, we're out here. All right.
Can I get the thumbnail?
Oh, I mean, you really wanna pose heavy.